Here with me today is Patrick De Haan with GasBuddy, here to talk about the new deal from the Trump administration that could potentially end the war in Iran that has caused gas prices to go up across the country. Here in Washington State, the average price is right around 5.50 a gallon, while much of that is attributed to state and local taxes. Patrick De Haan, big picture, what does this tentative deal mean for the potential reopening of the strait and gas prices here in Washington State?
Well, in Washington and much of the country, it's very much a do or die situation. We're starting to see some rather ominous figures. The SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, has declined to its lowest level since 1983. The delivery point for crude oil in the United States, the inventories have declined to their lowest level since 2014. Oil inventories in OECD countries has fallen to their lowest level since 1990. So this is very much a do or die situation to reopen the strait. If it does happen, it will mean potentially lower gasoline prices over the duration of the coming months rather quickly. We've already seen gas prices in Washington falling 23 cents in the last month on the hopes that a deal could happen. If this deal does move forward, it could mean more falling prices. But if it doesn't happen, which is a distinct possibility, it could mean gasoline prices eventually slingshot up even more significantly than they did in the last few months. So, very much an extreme amount of uncertainty over what's going to happen. But if the deal does happen and the strait does reopen and it's verifiable, it certainly would usher in lower gasoline and diesel prices for much of the rest of the year.
Can you kind of briefly explain where this deal is at right now? I know a lot of people might not know all the political jargon and context that goes around it, but for consumers at the pump, is this a concrete thing? Is it more of tell me where it's at?
Well, we've been back and forth. The president surfaced the idea of a deal. He announced the deal on Sunday, but we've seen in the past few months these deals may unravel, ceasefires may be violated. There are other elements that have continued this war for now 107 days, or the strait has been closed for 107 days. That's where things stand now. There's probably a lot of pressure the administration is under to get the strait reopened. Iran has certainly been leveraging that negotiation tactic by keeping the strait closed. And in the backdrop of this, global oil supplies have been dropping as a result. Now, oil markets have been anticipating that a deal would be imminent here for the last couple of weeks, and that's what has pushed oil down. Is the possibility has gone up of a deal. The president's been teasing it for weeks, but there's still the possibility that something could happen late in this that could unravel a potential deal. So, gas prices have been hanging on a thread to any developments, whether good or bad. And that is holding true now more than ever. Global oil inventories aren't looking very good. And if a deal doesn't happen, we're suddenly going to be greeted with the reality that global oil supplies are in a very precarious position.
If the deal does hold, how quickly could Washington State consumers see some relief at the pump? And at the same time, what would that price look like compared to the national average, assuming both fall with the deal going through?
Well, we've already seen oil prices declining even with the strait remaining closed based on this deal happening, and that's already impacting gas prices and pulling them down. So if the deal finally, gets through, it's just going to solidify more continued decreases that have already started. If the deal doesn't happen, it probably will mean the opposite. And it could mean a continued decline for as long as oil prices go down. But we don't have a whole lot of clarity on exactly what will happen. So it's impossible to know if this is going to pave the way for lower prices for the rest of the year, or whether there's going to be new turns and twists in the road down the road.
So right now, there's about a $1.45 gap between the national average and the Washington State average. Um, for Washington drivers, how much of that price is really tied to the global market versus state-specific costs like state taxes, the cap and trade climate program, and stuff like that?
Well, price in Washington about $1.10 a gallon more than they were a year ago. Beyond that, most of that is probably attributed. The difference that is beyond that $1.10 is attributed to Washington's programs like cap and invest, gasoline taxes. Washington now only trails California, which has even more environmental programs. So, much of the reason why Washington, 5.49 a gallon today, much of the reason why prices are over $5 have to do with Washington's higher gas taxes, its cap and invest program. But some of the higher costs is also attributed to states like California, which have essentially overregulated and pushed refineries to leave the state. And that is something that's impacted really the entirety of the West Coast. So you really can't underscore that Washington, a significant reason for Washington's elevated gas prices have to do with state specific taxes and state specific programs like cap and invest.
Uh, in the next 2 or so weeks, the state gas tax itself is set to increase by 2%, and it's going to continue in the years ahead. It doesn't seem like a major jump, but in terms of the state already having high gas prices compared to the rest of the country, how noticeable are little hikes like that to the average consumer?
Well, in and of themselves, they're not very noticeable. But over time, the total impact that these taxes have grows more and more significantly. Washington is already, as you mentioned, at a significant premium to the national average. Increases in gas taxes will further elevate the gap between the national average and Washington state in years ahead. So while the 2 cents may not be felt, the fact that Washington's average is $1.50 a gallon above the national average and growing is going to be a point of contention that continues in the years ahead.
I'm looking at the map behind you. It clearly shows Washington State bright red there with Oregon and California. If pressure does ease in the U.S.-Iranian conflict, um, will the state likely remain among the most expensive in the nation in terms of gas and diesel prices?
Yeah, without a doubt, the map behind me is not necessarily a single day snapshot. It's a snapshot of where things generally lie. The West Coast almost always the most expensive because of refining challenges, because California's unique environmental regulations have kind of forced refineries out of the state, or they've made it counterproductive to operate in the state. And then you have the West. Many states have elevated environmental standards. There is a cost to that, as well as high gasoline taxes. So, the map behind me may be a moment in time, but generally the proportions, when you look at states in the Gulf and states in the West Coast, generally those proportions hold up over time. And it's the exact opposite reasons that areas of the Gulf tend to be cheaper. It's low taxes, it's proximity to infrastructure that drives prices lower in Gulf states.
And to close, what should consumers be looking for in the next few weeks? Is it crude prices, the tanker traffic, refinery capacity? What will give them a sign that prices are likely to fall in the weeks or months ahead?
It's all about the situation between the US and Iran. Will the strait open? Will it open significantly? Oil prices will tell that story for you. So if you just watch the price of oil, that should be enough to know where we're headed.